We'll call to order the Audit, Safety, Compliance, and Real Estate Committee to order. Today is Tuesday, August 12th, 2025, and it's just a moment or two after 9 a.m. Would clerk please call the roll?
Mayor David Weiss, Chair.
Present.
Ms. Lauren Welch, Vice Chair. Ms. Anastasia Elder.
Here.
Ms. Emily Pachetti.
Here.
Mr. Jeffrey Sleesman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. First item is approval of the minutes of the August 5th, 2025 meeting. Any corrections or revisions? Not, I'll move approval. Is there a second?
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, those minutes passed. We have one item on the agenda today, but an important one. We'll have a report, the internal audit report for the second quarter of 2025. And with that, I will turn it over to Tony Garofoli, Executive Director for Internal Audit. Tony, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, Mayor Weiss, members of the Audit Committee, members of the audience, and folks online. As Mayor Weiss stated, this is a detailed report of our activities of the second quarter, 2025. To remind the board that we had our internal audit plan approved by the board in March of this year, and this is the second quarter of that plan's execution and us reporting on it. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize one of our staff auditors, Darren Garlock, to my left. Darren recently passed all the parts of the rigorous internal audit exam and met the requisite experience required to earn his certified internal auditor. So with that, I wanted to recognize Darren.
Great, congratulations.
Our agenda for today is we're going to give a report. Stephen is going to give a report on the Quality Assurance and Improvement Program. Molly will give an update as the board and audit committee has requested on the rail car replacement and infrastructure audit activities. And then we'll turn it back over to Stephen and the staff to report on our quarterly activities. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Zimmerman, our audit manager.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, Audit Chair Weiss, members of the Audit Committee, members of management. My name is Stephen Zimmerman. I'm the Audit Manager in the Internal Audit Department. I'm going to give an update on our Quality Assurance and Improvement Program as implemented through the International Professional Practices Framework of the Institute of Internal Auditors. So a reminder, a Quality Assurance and Improvement Program, or QAIP for short, enables an evaluation of the internal audit activities' conformance with the global internal audit standards, and those internal audit standards were updated in 2024. The program also assesses the efficiency and effectiveness of our internal audit activity and helps us identify opportunities for improvement. The QIP is multifaceted. It includes our internal review and quality assurance processes for all work performed by staff, our post-audit lessons learned reviews, our client satisfaction surveys, the tracking of our key performance indicators, annual internal assessments, and once every 5-year external assessments. I'll have updates today on both our key performance indicators as well as our progress on our internal assessment, which was our readiness for the new standards. So this is our key performance indicators for the department, the second time we're presenting them to the board. A reminder for the board that the quarters that are outlined here are based on our audit plan year. So when we have our audit plan approved at the beginning of March, that starts our first quarter. So quarter one is March, April, May. Quarter two will be June, July, August. So when we present this information, we're a little early on the end of the quarter, but still should be pretty accurate where we'll land at the end of the month here. The first topic area we'll be looking at is audit delivery and efficiency, with the first measure being audits completed over audits planned. The target for quarter two is to have 30% of the audits completed versus audits planned. We are tracking at 14% as of now, so we're approximately 1 quarter behind. On the topic of schedule adherence, this is measuring audits that are greater than 30 days past any particular audit phase's scheduled completion date. So that's whether it be the planning and risk assessment phase, the fieldwork phase, or the reporting phase. We do have some upward trend here. To 53% of our audits are at least 1 month behind, although I will say the majority of the audits that are 1 month or greater behind are only behind by 1 month, but this could be also contributing to our delay on the target for completed audits this year. Additionally, we're tracking the timeliness of our reporting, which is the average days from the end of fieldwork to the report publication date. Our target is to keep that within 60 days. That allows us time to do our internal review, schedule exit conference, obtain management response, and then send out that final published report with management response included. We are seeing improvement in this area, although it slow going at first. We did implement some new strategies in Q1 to try and bring this number down. So I think we're starting to see some fruition in those strategies, and as the year goes on, the number will continue to improve. I think this might also be a good time to mention that the quarterly report results that I'm sharing right now are cumulative for the quarter. So there's some pros and cons to showing cumulative statistics versus quarter per quarter statistics. So for example, if we eliminated the original reports from Q1 and the Q2 metric, that would show 108 days versus 114. So just keep in mind these will be cumulative for this reporting period. Under the topic of staff development, it is our goal that by the end of the year we will have provided 40 hours of continuing professional education credits for all of our employees. We obtain the majority of these credits through the local professional organizations such as the IAA, or the Information Systems Auditor Association or the Certified Fraud Examiners Organization, where they hold chapter meetings and training opportunities. All of those organizations go on summer recess, so there haven't been training in the months of June and July. However, we are scheduled to go into our first training for the new fall to spring curriculum in August of this month. So we should be on target to reach 40 by the end of the year, or by the end of the quarter reporting period. And the topic of certifications achieved, this is a metric that will not increment often, of course, though, as Tony already said. We had the celebration of Darren Garlock receiving his Certified Internal Auditor designation. So we have incremented up to 6 of 8, which is a really great result for any department to have so many certified individuals, but our goal is for everyone to be certified, so we'll continue to work towards that goal. On the top of client satisfaction surveys, I do have to disclose that there was a change in the way that this metric was calculated. So in Q1, we had defined a client as being satisfied if they had a composite average score of 4 across all of their responses to our survey. Now, I realized when I calculated this quarter's results that if we use the average of 4 out of 5, because it's a Likert scale from very dissatisfied to very satisfied, we could have a survey result come back that was 4s on every question except for 1, which was neutral, a 3, and they would be considered not satisfied. And that didn't seem like it was our intention to categorize that individual as a not satisfied client. So I've changed the metric to be measuring anyone that averages 3.5 or higher, and that resulted in approximately 1 survey being changed. However, because the population of that first quarter's results were so small, there was only 7 surveys total, that 1 switch from not satisfied to satisfied due to the way the metric was calculated caused a large jump in the percentage. In the Q2 results, that's 10 total surveys we're measuring, so 8 out of 10 surveys showing satisfaction. The last 2 topics on issue tracking and issue follow-up, we measure the average number of days since the last status update for any open audit issues. So we request monthly status updates for all of our clients to make sure they're making progress on our recommendations. Knowing that some recommendations are longer-term recommendations, our target is to keep those under 60 days, and we're well under that target of 42. And then the last metric is the closure of eligible issues. So every time a client implements a recommendation, it's our responsibility to verify that that recommendation was implemented according to the original action plan and obtain sufficient evidence to do that closure. So our target is to have 100% of eligible issues closed, and we had positive growth in this area with 93% of all eligible issues are closed. Before I move on to the next slide, I'll pause if there's any questions from the board on these metrics.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Yes. Hi. Thank you for your presentation so far. You had mentioned, at least with respect to client satisfaction, kind of changing the way in which you captured that number in Q2 as compared with Q1. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, did you apply the method that you use in Q2 to Q1 just so the numbers don't seem skewed? Is that what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so in last quarter's presentation, that number was 51%. So now it's 71%.
Okay.
So I've updated the metrics so that it's following the same methodology, but I wanted to disclose that that number's changed because we've changed the way we define satisfied.
Got it. Understood. Thank you. And then you had also mentioned that, and I don't know if it was specific to the categories under audit, delivery, and efficiency or applicable across the board, but you mentioned that these numbers were cumulative versus quarterly.
Correct.
Is that for every category that we're seeing, or is that just for the first?
So it is true for every category with the exception of two, which I call snapshot. So the last two metrics are snapshot metrics. It's based on a report that we get out of our audit management system that tells us as of that date, what are the average number of days from status updates and then how many eligible issues were closed. The reason is because the denominator on that changes wildly from quarter to quarter because as new recommendations are introduced, old recommendations are closed. There's really not comparability between the quarters, so those are just a snapshot in time. The remainder of them are shown as cumulative.
Got it. And maybe this is just an education opportunity for me, but is there some benefit to seeing the difference between what we've achieved actually within a quarter as opposed to just only looking at the cumulative numbers?
So there's pros and cons. So it would be reasonable to say transition away from the cumulative approach and have a year-to-date column at the end that shows, okay, for the quarters that we have, this is the year-to-date number, but each individual metric shows what just was earned in the quarter. However, there are some metrics that just naturally make sense to be cumulative, things like attainment of the audit plan or the training hours, because those are just simple summations towards a target. The things where showing individual quarter performance might make more sense are when we're looking at things that are based on averages, like client surveys from that quarter, and percentage of audits. And actually, the other one that's not cumulative is the percentage of audits that are greater than 30 days past scheduled completion, because again, that's a snapshot of what audits at this time are or are not past 1 month. So apologies, that's another one that's a snapshot.
Understood. I would say that, I guess, my recommendation, what I would like to see is, to some extent, seeing what the numbers are in an actual quarter as compared with cumulative across the board. For the categories, at least, that you've mentioned, would make sense to have that quarterly number as opposed to just a cumulative.
We can do that.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment that this is a snapshot in time, and this is a tool that we use to help us to focus efforts in key performance areas, not a report card. Okay, so this is a guiding premise for us that was suggested in our quality assessment that was done.
To that extent, and I won't freak out about those first three numbers, but they diverge from the goals there. There could be any number of reasons for that, and like you said, it's at this moment, and there's the things that are behind are no more than a month in general. But is there, at least for the year, are we either on track or is there a plan to catch up on those things?
Well, let me tell you what goes into some of those numbers. Certainly, we have different phases of audit between the risk assessment, fieldwork phase, reporting phase, follow-up phase. So working with management to receive their management comments before we publish a report. So there's a lot of moving parts. And what you'll see later in our presentation is a slide that represents just that you'll see that although this particular metric shows its result, you'll see in a slide that all of our projects are planned or in a different phase, could be reporting. So it is a moving target. It's not meant to be a report card. It's just a tool for us so that we can focus on areas to help improve our internal performance.
Okay.
A good example of that is on the percentage of audits that are past their scheduled completion. That tells us, are we allocating enough time for our engagements, not whether they're taking too long. And then for the audit plan completed, we're our own biggest critics. So we do develop an audit plan that we know will be challenging to accomplish because we want to address as much risk as we can in the organization. It would be very easy for us to come to the board and give a very short audit plan and achieve it. But that's not the intent. The intent is let's have a robust audit plan that we want to strive to achieve. And if, we can identify ways that we can either right-size the audit plan, fast-track certain projects that are lower risk. It's all part of this decision-making we're using internally.
Yeah, and there's being behind doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be behind for the year. And at the same time, if there are targets here that are not going to be met and not going to be met on a regular basis, then they're not really great targets. But it sounds like for at least a couple of days, you do have plans and you are adjusting how you're allocating time. So that part kind of answers my question. And also, like, if these are routinely behind, maybe we should shift them, and that, even if it's an allocate, like across the first one, maybe, 15, 20, 50, 90, like that kind of thing, if it's something where you're going to catch up over the course of the year. But it's just when we see targets and then see numbers below the target, if there's a perfectly good reason for it, I'd say change the target then. And if there's things that can be done, we either need to have those in place or something needs to change.
Right, because I think that, with us the board being here and asking questions, we're able to surmise or get from you an explanation as to why we're behind. But if I am the viewing public and the only thing I see is this document, this looks like we're behind, not that maybe we were off on our timing for the completion of it, right? Which I think is an important piece, right? We either need something that's going to say on here, hey, we're behind because, we could do better on our timing. Maybe we need to add an additional 30 days if most of our projects are a month behind or something like that, as opposed to, we're just not hitting a reasonable target. See what I'm saying?
Thank you for the feedback.
That's good feedback, and this is the first year we've had these targets, so there will be some refinement
Yeah,
needed.
there
And
Right.
I appreciate all the feedback from the board. And just for the topic of the delivery, what we also find is that when we start the audit plan year, all the projects are just at the
Yeah.
beginning phase. So over the course of the year, we will build momentum.
Yeah.
And then as momentum builds, more and more projects will be hitting. So near Q3, Q4, a lot of projects are going to be coming before the board because we'll be finishing those projects that might have taken a little longer. So that could also explain.
We can keep an
the
eye on those
trajectory.
to maybe adjust those. And I don't want to oblige you to a bunch of work here, but maybe to get the metrics where it makes sense for folks. If it would be relatively easy, maybe look back and say, oh, what would this have looked like the last couple of years if we had these metrics? And then maybe you can get a better sense of, because I understand that this is the first year and you're gonna have to adjust those. But in arrears, it might give you some more data just to fine tune those so you're not.
We also have to consider that some of the audit projects that we schedule are more complex, have a higher risk priority, things that we need to do in the first quarter versus the fourth quarter. So there's a lot of moving targets that go into our work. And again, this is not a report card.
Yeah.
It's just a tool.
Thanks.
I would just add one final comment, then we'll move on. But maybe have a slightly different take on the targets, right? Because if you have targets that you always hit, then the question is, are you pushing yourself, enough on your targets? So I'll leave it to you. To me, having some that have been met, some that haven't been met yet, is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
So, okay.
Thank you. All right, now we will transition to the update on the III Readiness Assessment results. So as a reminder, in 2024, the Institute of Internal Auditors published new internal audit standards, the Global Internal Audit Standards. And as part of the rollout of those new standards, they published a tool for internal audit departments to use. And this tool is meant for departments that were already in conformance with the pre-existing standards to identify what kind of changes would need to take place to be ready to be in conformance with the new standards. And one of the reasons for this is a lot of things that used to be best practice or supplemental guidance became mandatory guidance. So the IIA defined 30 different topic areas to evaluate. We reviewed these 30 different topics against our internal processes and procedures, and we identified 11 corrective action plans for us to get in conformance with the new standards. Over the last few quarters, I have presented some updates on those, and we're down to 3 remaining corrective action plans. The first one is bulleted at the top there, which is there was a corrective action plan related to the publication of theme reports. When an internal audit function completes a number of audits around a common theme, the IAA recommends that we publish a cohesive theme report, which can opine on things such as trends or common risk threads to then provide additional levels of assurance to the organization. And so we are planning to publish our first audit theme report in the third quarter on customer experience. In doing so, we will have satisfied the standard of 11.3 communicating results. However, there are still 2 outstanding items, and both of these are pending charter approval. So when the new global internal audit standards came out, they also came out with a new model charter. So we had taken the original RTA charter, reviewed it against the model charter, and proposed a revised draft, one that would use the language and vocabulary of the new internal audit standards. However, that charter is still pending approval. Until that charter is approved, it would be too early to implement the last 2 items, being audit strategy and the administrative procedure for management response. And the reason for that is the charter discusses topics such as governance, managing the internal audit function, the reporting relationships, and all of those are so entwined with both the audit strategy and the administrative procedure. It will be best to wait until the charter is approved to proceed on those 2 topics. All right, I will now transition to Molly O'Donnell, who will give an update on our railcar replacement infrastructure audit activities.
Good morning, Audit Chair Weiss, General Manager Birdsong Terry, and members of the Audit Committee. Currently, we have the contract with Siemens Mobility, Inc. for the base contract of 24 light rail vehicles, and then we still have the 2 6 and 18 car options that were approved by the board. We completed our pre-award contract compliance reviews for the base contract as well as the 6 and 18 car options. That included a procurement, an audit of the procurement process for the base contract as well as pre-award Buy America reviews for the base contract and both options. At this point, we are reviewing project management deliverables, reviewing change orders, and completing invoice reviews as part of our work for the post-award contract compliance phase. As an update, the first painted car shell is complete and assembly is underway for the vehicles. Management is currently preparing the final option for up to 12 additional rail cars. And then at that point, we will conduct our pre-award Buy America review. The Audit Committee and the board asked us to take a look at change orders and spend some time evaluating them closely. So this is the change order log that is maintained by our procurement department, and there have been no additional change orders since we last presented it. The original contract amount was for $163.9 million. There's been $143.8 million of vehicle option change orders at this point. There's been $671,000 of additional change orders, which brings us to a total contract amount of $308.4 million. This is the potential change order log that's maintained by the project management team. This keeps track of potential change orders. And as a reminder, potential change orders may or may not become a change order. This just tracks the evolution of how change orders are brought forth. There's also been no updates to the potential change order log since we last shared it.
Just a comment that this is meant to be, an example or a facsimile of the potential change order log. Okay, I know it's tough to read, and it was not meant to provide factual information.
We review payments to Siemens in GCRT's financial management system. As I shared before, including change orders, the total value of the contract is $308.4 million. GCRTA has paid $115.9 million as of August 1st, 2025. That results in 37% of the total contract amount plus change orders being paid. As we've shared before, there's a whole bunch of other contracts that are involved in the bigger railcar replacement program. On this slide, the Port Connector construction project is currently under audit. And then other projects that are on this list will be under audit when the project reaches the construction phase. This is the FTA has assigned a project management oversight consultant. The responsibilities of that consultant are, as it says, to determine whether the project is on time, within budget, in conformance with design and quality criteria, and constructed to approved specifications. The project management oversight consultant reviewed our pre-award by America work for the base contract and the 6-car option. We expect that they may conduct another review of our pre-award reviews for the 18-car and the final option. The project management oversight consultant is also holding us to a standard of intermediate audits where we conduct domestic content monitoring, and then also will likely review our post-delivery by America reviews. The PMOC that's been assigned to our project is LS Gallegos. They have monthly meetings with the project management team and the procurement department, and our internal audit department management is actively engaged in those meetings.
Are there any questions on this segment of the report?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for your presentation. In light, I mean, you mentioned that we do have some oversight from FTA on this project. Do we anticipate any challenges to come in light of just the changing federal landscape?
There are certain requirements that the Federal Transit Administration and the oversight have suggested, and management has put controls in place to address them. Things like a risk log and other controls, and those controls serve to both report out and to help manage the project. So the monthly meetings help a lot, so that everyone stays in contact and understands what those requirements are.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, the monthly meetings are with LS Gallegos, not with the FTA, correct?
They are with both.
Okay.
Each will facilitate a meeting. Most recently, the FTA has been facilitating those meetings, but it is a shared agenda, and we are not the lead in that meeting. Project management is the lead. So, but we are there to respond to any questions and to offer our broad knowledge, certainly on the Buy America that Molly has suggested earlier.
Thank you.
One other question going back to the potential change orders. Just curious, how active is that? I mean, how many are coming off that list and turning into actual change orders? Or
So this is an internal control that's established through the RTA for as many years as I've been here. And the potential change orders can be brought forth by the owner, the RTA, the vendor. Could be brought forth by an oversight, such as the FTA or some other, law organization. So as these potential change orders are captured, they're evaluated, and then, if the need is to go forward, they can be grouped, they can be disregarded. So this is just a tool or more of a register to capture all of those issues. So when in the change order log, which is on the previous slide, these at one point were potential change orders, okay? Yeah, okay. And then, as I said, what is grouped together, what's considered, what meets the general manager's threshold, what needs to be brought forth to the board, what needs to have a risk assessment or an audit, and then to remind the board or the committee that there is a change order review committee that's established. It's within our procurement policy. It includes project management, the law department, okay? It includes our cash management and treasury, our budget office, our Office of Business Development and Internal Audit. Our procurement department runs that meeting. So everything's evaluated for compliance with federal regulations and law as it's being considered prior to consideration by the general manager, CEO.
Thank you.
All right. We will now transition to our update on the second quarter activities. So our presentation format is the same from previous quarters and will mirror the agenda of the published report, which will be coming at a future board meeting. We've been sharing this graphic, which displays the 2025 audit plan coverage by audit scheduled, same since the beginning of the year when the audit plan was approved. I do want to mention to the board that is a best practice that an internal audit function perform some sort of mid-year evaluation of the audit plan to ensure that the audits identified at the beginning of the year still align with the risk factors that are affecting the organization by mid-year. So we plan to host a mid-year retreat internally to look at the remaining projects on the audit plan and identify whether there are new projects that need to be added, projects that maybe have dropped to a lower risk or maybe they don't need to be included. What projects do we need to fast track? Which projects might we defer to a future audit plan year? So we're going to do that at the end of this month. If we do have recommended revisions for the audit plan, we will bring those to the board for your approval. But for an example, this year we have either completed or have in progress every customer experience audit on our audit plan. So the beginning of the year really was focused on customer experience engagements and getting that first audit theme report out. Now we're looking at what might our next theme focus be.
And that'll be financial health.
This is our chart that shows the audit plan progress as of the second quarter. What this is showing is that the majority of our projects are either in progress or complete. So showing that even though we have many projects still yet to do, a lot of them are in a different phase of audit, whether that be the planning and risk assessment phase, the fieldwork phase, or the reporting phase. And we will have brief updates in our tabular form on all of those projects in progress a little later in the presentation.
And this is the slide that I was referring to earlier when we were talking about the metrics. So in combination of this slide, where you can see we have a lot of projects in different phases, as well as what Stephen just mentioned about our mid-year retreat in terms of prioritizing when we'll do things, if we'll do things, bringing it back to the board's consideration. All those elements play into that metric that we talked about earlier.
All right, the staff is now going to provide updates on their completed projects, starting with Darren Garlock.
Thank you, Stephen. Audit Chair Weiss, General Manager, CEO Birdsong Terry, and members of the Audit Committee, good morning. So for my completed project, the audit was of on-time performance. The objective was to evaluate the processes for defining, measuring, and improving on-time performance. The scope was bus and rail on-time performance in 2024 and 2025. This tied into the audit theme of customer experience, and the results were marginally unsatisfactory with recommendations for management. Some management successful practices that were identified during this audit. There's continuous monitoring and adjusting of timetables based on operator and customer feedback. And there's utilization of the new operations analysis team to enhance the on-time performance analytical techniques. Our recommendations make adjustments to the parameters for measuring early vehicles due to technological improvements to measurement margin of error, improvements to increase the accurate recording and reporting of real-time information for customers on rail and bus, enhancements to internal and external reporting of detailed on-time performance metrics, including enhanced reporting for board governance, and implement strategies to identify and address poor performing route segments to improve customer perception of on-time performance.
I'd like to mention that you had the presentation from the Operations Analysis Group at the last board meeting, and certainly that addresses many of these issues that have been brought forward.
If there are no further questions, I will turn it over to Laura Crawshaw.
Just one question on the,
Sure.
I mean, is this a selective group, or is these of bus lines and rail lines, or are these complete, every line reviewed
The entire,
portfolio? Okay.
On that point, do we have a breakdown of like satisfaction on particular routes, or is this just lump sum?
a breakdown of customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
Because when we report on-time performance, it's based on when the bus leaves the time point. Did it leave early? Did it leave on time? Or did it leave late? And so then the percentage of on time is based on how many left on time. So when we're looking at the metric, the traction survey is looking at, going out and asking customers, are you satisfied? Do you feel that the bus is on time? This is looking at the data that's being captured by the radio system. And
okay.
is it leaving when it's supposed to be leaving?
Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. And I guess on that point, oh, thank you.
All right, I will turn it over to Laura Crawshaw.
Can I ask one more quick question on that one? This is more a process question, I guess. When you have these recommendations, is it like, are there specific adjustments you recommend, or improvements you recommend, enhancements you recommend, or do you say, hey, this is what we see, you're going to want to figure out what you guys should do about this, and then it goes to it's basically where the handoff is. That's my question. It's a sheer informational question.
Maybe I can answer that in two ways. So there's a couple of layers of aggregation happening. So for our board presentations, we are summarizing up
Right.
into a high level. The recommendations are more detailed in the report.
Okay.
However, it is our custom to not be overly prescriptive
Yeah.
in our recommendations, and we usually try to leave room for management to bring their subject matter expertise to find the best solution. That's also usually, sometimes our management responses end up resulting in completely different recommendations because new content and context is apparent after collaboration. That's why the exit conference and the collaboration that happens at the exit conference is so important for the audit report.
Great, thanks.
If I can just piggyback for a minute, I think that's correct. Jeff, if you were kind of asking too, is kind of how do we get to resolution for some of these things too? It definitely is a layered process. I think that's the right way to explain it. I think it really depends on, and I definitely invite the team to answer as well. It depends on the audit as far as, because everything is different. Everyone isn't exactly the same. So there may be some data that comes through the audit that needs some additional explanation and needs some additional justification or not by the management team. So then we also take a look at, is it a resource issue? Is it a personnel issue? Is it a financial issue? Those kind of things. That it is an infrastructure, and then take a look at what could also get to the resolution. Because I think the themes that are in the audits are what's the most important part. And then usually, especially within operations, there's a multi-layered effect that goes into it. And there may also be multiple departments that could help to get to the end destination, so to speak, that's being brought up in the audit theme. I know there's a lot of them that Tony and I go through, Stephen and I go through, all of the auditors really, even down to travel, right? To say, hey, is there something we could change through an administrative procedure or an SOP that might give us a different value or a different outcome later on in the next process, so that we can continually monitor these items to make sure that there's a change, not just once, but that there's a lasting impact over time.
Great, thanks.
Morning, Audit Chair Weiss, General Manager Birdsong Terry, and committee members. I will now present my completed projects. The first one was an audit of fuel expense for CNG and propulsion. There was one done for gasoline and diesel earlier in the year. Our objective was an evaluation of contract compliance and to obtain background information, including expenditure trends, documentation of the workflow processes, invoice payments, and access controls. Our scope was compressed natural gas and propulsion power overseen by the energy manager. This audit was in the audit theme of financial health, and our results were satisfactory with recommendations for management. Management successful practices. We found a robust control environment for ensuring that GCRTA is correctly invoiced for natural gas and electricity usage for fuel. We had one recommendation, which was to implement independent verification that Trillium performs maintenance on CNG stations required by the contract schedule prior to the invoice payment, and the energy manager has implemented this process in the last couple of invoice periods. Next was an audit of the railcar infrastructure modification designs. Our objective was to evaluate project management controls for the railcar infrastructure modification design projects. Our scope was all projects for infrastructure modifications supporting the railcar replacement program. This audit was to provide assurance on an overall strategy of project management, not on individual design projects. This audit was in the audit theme of community impact, and our results were satisfactory with recommendations for management. The railcar project team's master infrastructure schedule is very well developed, accurate, and updated proactively, and engineering staff communicate details of projects transparently to internal stakeholders. Our one recommendation, we saw the value of that master schedule for the railcar project specifically, so we recommended to implement a similarly formatted or organized schedule for the entire RTA capital program, and engineering management has also implemented this schedule and included it in the past couple of monthly progress reports. We also complete travel and expense reimbursement reviews. We review all trip reports and travel expense reimbursements for compliance with policy and procedures. We review 100% of trips and expenses. Our results, travels are compliant with policy. All non-compliant trip reports are returned to travelers for correction, and we review them again prior to processing. And I'll turn it back over to Stephen to go through our projects in progress.
Thank you, Laura. So the next few slides, we summarize all the projects in progress in tabular format, and we organize them according to phase. Any new projects that are appearing in this slide for the first time this quarter will be highlighted in green. And then there are a couple instances, particularly in the planning and risk assessment phase audits, where if an audit has been on the project in progress slide for a couple quarters in a row, we're denoting why there may have been a delay for that particular project. So these are the first few. We have some additional projects on this slide, again showing some new projects started this quarter. And then this should be the remainder of the projects that are in the planning and risk assessment phase. That's where we're doing our interviews, gathering process documentation, designing and developing our risk control matrices. Then projects that are in fieldwork. These are projects where we have already met with the client, had an entrance conference, and are now executing tests of controls. And then we actually do have one project that skipped all the way to fieldwork because the risk assessment was pretty quick. That'd be the Windows 11 upgrade, which is progressing pretty well. And then finally, we have our projects that are in the reporting phase. These are when fieldwork's complete, and we are either in the process of drafting our report, have scheduled the exit conference, may have already had the exit conference, but are still waiting on management response. The report can't be considered complete. Oh, there's only one slide. The report can't be considered complete until we get that management response and publish that report to all stakeholders.
A comment, again, these series of slides also give some detail to that metric that we spoke to earlier.
New for this quarter, I have taken the projects that are considered construction out of those previous slide tables and showed them here, mostly because for a construction project, a long life cycle we'll spend in the fieldwork phase because we'll be auditing the construction project as construction is ongoing. And then I thought it might be of some value to both show when is that target completion date for that particular construction project according to the most recent construction updates, as well as the construction budget with the change orders at the time. So these are the 4 construction audits that are currently in progress. And then, as we've done in previous quarters, Buy America projects, only 3 right now ongoing. The locomotive, which is on site but still undergoing quality assurance and testing before we can do our post-delivery audit. The board was presented with information regarding an option which will be voted on in the future for the Siemens rail car, up to 12 vehicles. If that's approved, we'll do our pre-award. And then, as Molly referred to earlier in the presentation, we plan to do a review of all 60, if we purchase up to 60 LRVs on what we call domestic content monitoring, making sure that those earliest procurements still have a plan in place with supplier contracts in place at this point to ensure they'll meet Buy America compliance at post-delivery. I'll now transition over to Randy Bowles, who will give us an update on continuous audit.
Sorry. Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, Audit Chair Weiss, members of the Audit Committee, and General Manager and CEO Birdsong Terry, and guests. Continuous audit is a method utilizing a series of scripts to perform auditing activities on a more frequent basis to identify risk and any exceptions for investigation by appropriate staff and management. And I won't go through the 7 steps that we follow. Continuous auditing consists of nepotism, purchasing card, payroll, and revenue reconciliation that we do monthly, and we do paratransit customer eligibility once a year. And this slide here shows the revenue that we collect through mobile revenue, cash, credit, and it shows all the amounts year to date. And everything is collected under 2% variance. That's the tolerable rate between fare box and what's deposited to the bank. And mainly what this shows is that all the money is collected, counted, deposited, and posted to the GL. And on here it shows that mobile is in development, but I'm going to touch on that a little bit later in the presentation because we've made a lot of progress with the mobile development. And the purchasing card shows all the year-to-date purchases. It shows the total average purchase, the highest purchase, and the number of transactions. And the tests do not necessarily mean that anything's wrong. It's just something that's kind of highlighted, and we all sit down once a month. Actually, we're doing that today, where we look at all these tests just to make sure everything looks okay. Payroll. This chart highlights all the dollar amounts for all of quarter 2. And we look at 3 groups, FOP, non-bargaining, and ATU for 6 quarters, and we look at approximately 42,000 records, total compensation. And again, we look at the tests we do, excessive work hours, overtime, terminated employees, and deductions. And just like the other, it doesn't mean anything's wrong. And after this meeting, we'll be analyzing this quarter's results, or this month's results. And continuous audits, some of the ones that are newer in development, comp time, we're planning on doing a 2025 run. And then mobile ticket reconciliation, that was one I was referring to before. We have since built a data warehouse where I download the data from Masabi and store it in an internal data warehouse for internal audit. And a lot of those metrics are being developed and we're looking at them in-house. It's just not quite ready, to open them up for the board and other people to see, but we are looking at it in-house. And the fuel expense, that's one that I did, I think it was last year, and I haven't done a whole lot with it yet, but I still have the script done. So I plan on just running that, and I hope to get it ran before the next meeting. Independent eligibility, we plan on doing that in 2025. And again, the dashboards, all the data all the charts that I've showed in this presentation does exist, where I get the data from, I export it from our continuous audit scripts, or I might download it from a vendor. It is stored in our internal data warehouse, and all those charts were developed, cut and paste right out of it. In the past, we had to take all the monthly data and manually build the reports for every quarterly report. This month, we just cut and pasted it. And we have it done internally, and we're still working on it so that we can present it to management on our internal audit website, to present to management and possibly the board. And that's all I have. Is if there's any dashboards or anything that anyone at any time might want us to add, just let us know, and we can work on getting that done. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Any questions on the execution of our audit scripts?
Question is on the mobile fares in development monthly. So what does that mean exactly?
So we are reliant on a third party to process, collect money, and then transfer into the RTA. So we're developing an in-house script to identify that that third party is transferring all of the sales, all of the, we're looking at other things such as a customer purchases a ticket, are they activating them? Are they expiring? Are they using them? Is it being decremented as they use them on the vehicles? Again, are we collecting the money? There's a fee associated with the third party. Are we paying the correct fees in accordance with the transactions that we're seeing? So there's a number of things we're trying to address in the script. It is in development. It has been for a little bit. As you can see in the earlier chart, if you'll go back, Randy, you'll see in the revenue, is it the purple, Randy, is the mobile? You can see where the mobile ticketing is overcoming the other sources of revenue. So we feel that we need to address this through audit to provide some assurance to management and the board.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Chair Weiss, GM CEO Birdsong Terry, members of the Audit Committee. Just wanted to touch briefly on several other ongoing technology projects in the authority. Starting off with the upgrade of the consolidated train dispatch system. That project has been ongoing for some time now, and the team is moving into the phase of installation of equipment, installation of new fiber lines, and testing of that equipment and getting ready for go live, I believe the goal is by end of year. We are also taking a look at our bid dispatch system with system enhancements. That was the operator management module that we saw earlier on the program. It's a very robust module within the system that we just haven't configured prior. So the team is actively working with the vendor to configure the attendance rules within the system. Right now, it's a very manual process, and the configuration of that aspect of the module will allow us to have more robust tracking and more accurate tracking of operator attendance. As part of the recommendations from the auditor state, we are actively working on disaster recovery efforts for our financial management systems. That is being done by the IT Council, which we'll get down to in a couple bullet points. Our paratransit scheduling system is currently in progress for an upgrade. We have staff auditor Kylie Cianciola beginning that audit right now. And then once that project and audit are complete, the team will be moving on to the implementation of the Pass mobile application, which we've talked about in prior meetings, which is a Uber-like app, which will allow clients to schedule and track their rides through their cell phones versus having to call into the dispatch and get updates through phone calls. We have the newly reinvigorated IT Council, made up of Dr. Flounce Kaver, Rajan Gautam, and Tony Garofoli, and then other members including Director of MIS, Joshua Miranda, Director of IT, Charles Morgan, and myself. The council right now is focusing on the establishment of IT governance items. So right now we're in the process of finalizing an AI policy for the acceptable usage of AI and how to use it within the authority, as well as the council being responsible for any follow-up recommendations from the Auditor of State. The MIS team, they have a subgroup of staff working on the implementation of robotic process automation. So much like our continuous audit scripts where we are able to run them frequently, the robotic process automation is to run those day-to-day tasks to assist with the alleviation of certain duties, as well as the testing of certain functions during system upgrades and times where patches are required. The IT team also working on the upgrade of the fluid management system. Here we have the learning management and applicant tracking systems with asterisks. Those are currently somewhat delayed from audit and potentially will be dropping off from implementation as we move down into the ERP replacement. We currently have a procurement going for an ERP replacement consultant, much like the TVM consultant we have to replace all of our fare vending machines out at the stations. We'll be engaging a consultant to help us evaluate the needs of the organization when it comes to replacing our current Oracle ERP. We touched on the Windows 11 upgrade. The Windows 10 is sunsetting later this year, so we want to make sure that all of our machines are either upgraded to Windows 11 and compliant, or there are controls in place for those machines which may or may not be eligible due to software limitations. And then we have fare updates last. The ticket vending machine consultant is ongoing, as well as the implementation for fare-based ticketing and fare capping. That process is moving along smoothly now after some road bumps had been hit regarding the purchasing and testing of devices to be able to be installed in paratransit vehicles and for our third-party paratransit contractors. With that, I will turn it back over to Tony.
Are there any questions on the IT technology segment?
It certainly doesn't have to be now, but I would like an update on the fare capping and account-based ticketing at some point, if that's possible.
Okay, moving on to special requests, emerging issues. There are 3 projects outlined here, and they are all in some form of conclusion. We're just working through some of the issues between management and third parties. Thank you, Stephen. External audit coordination. We have a responsibility to coordinate our efforts with third parties and other auditors that come in. So we did work with the state auditors who were here for quite a bit as they audited the financial statements, with John Taher's group and Raj Gautam. Their report was issued on July the 9th. You had that exit conference with them in the June board meeting. The state safety oversight is very active in our safety audits. We are working with the safety department to conduct some of those audits, and we certainly attend those quarterly meetings and stay aware of the regulations. Molly reported earlier on the Federal Transit Administration project management oversight on the rail car program. So, status of outstanding follow-up. Stephen reported on this a little bit earlier in a metric where I believe it was 93% of the outstanding issues are closed, which is great. All of our audits recommendations are tracked in our computerized audit management system, which we use to interact with business contacts throughout the authority. Other projects. We continue to work through with our procurement department to bring on a third-party auditor to help us with the claims expense audits for healthcare. As this says, we are spending approximately $1 million a week on healthcare at the organization. And we are going to engage this third party to help us review claims information in accordance with plan design and third-party contracts. Other projects, rounding out the presentation, we do manage the fraud hotline. As Andrew mentioned, we're part of the Information Technology Council. As I mentioned, the Change Order Review Committee, Railcar Replacement Committee, Steering Committee, Raj Gautam's Executive Records Management Commission, and then on a biweekly basis, we participate in the authority's new employee orientation program. Staff training during the second quarter. As Stephen mentioned earlier, we're trying to reach that 40 hours per person per year as a metric. And here is some of the training that we had during that second quarter. And as Stephen mentioned, our training will ramp up in the third quarter as our local chapters are all off summer break. And that concludes our report, and I'll be happy, or the staff will be happy, to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Just one question, and may not necessarily be today or for the audit committee, but on the IT side, I assume we do, the agency does, testing of cybersecurity type issues, phishing schemes, and that sort of thing is part of kind of our normal training.
Let me comment on that. So our IT department, and certainly led by Florence Caver, there is a robust awareness program where a third party is hired to provide not only training, but flash examples for employees throughout the year so that they can see attempts at phishing, see emails that may be something to be a red flag. So a very robust program. Also, management employers are required to take a training annually to bring their awareness even greater in terms of malware and phishing and access controls and so forth. In terms of the IT council that Andrew alluded to earlier with the governance, so in recognizing that cybersecurity risk is, if you look at any survey, whether that be an audit survey, company survey, IT or cybersecurity risk is one or two in many surveys. So we are developing this governance program with a series of different types of policies. One would be for the board's consideration, and then others are to package into an employee book of policies so that we can educate employees and then evaluate compliance.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to just sort of see trends, just at a very macro level at some point along the way. So how we're doing overall as an agency, or are we having? I assume that the attacks have continued to rise, but
every day.
How we do though in response to them.
I have a quick follow-up on that. Would this is so that I understand this process better, would that be a good candidate for the continuous auditing? And how do you pull out different themes for the continuous audit as opposed to the ones we kind of decide on?
Surely. Our foundation for continuous auditing is where there are high volume of transactions, okay? So where an old style internal audit department might sample, first of all, evaluate controls in place, risks and controls. And where the risk score suggests that we should be engaged because controls are not effective. Then where there is a high volume of transactions, old school auditors would sample those transactions and then try to project the results of their tests against the entire population. In continuous auditing, given these big data systems that the authority has, we have specialized audit software and scripts to where we can evaluate 100% of the transactions. We're not sampling. So that's the foundation or basis for our selection in continuous auditing. So, like, for example, the payroll system, our largest line item on the profit and loss statement. And then a lot of transactions, obviously. Everyone gets paid. Evaluating overtime or under-taxed or folks who've left ghost employees, to sample that as compared to look at them all through a computerized script, taking advantage of technology. So I hope I'm answering your question. In terms of cybersecurity, we certainly look for opportunities to evaluate cybersecurity on a wholesale basis. It starts with things such as do we have the right plans in place for disaster recovery, and do we have the systems? Are they patched, and do they include the updated virus protections? So just some basic level, foundation level issues. Access control. Are systems configured with access so that the rights and privileges are the least privilege that you need to do your job and meet the business objective? So we're doing those kinds of audits. But in terms of continuous audit, we certainly look for ways to evaluate that.
So for clarification, is it under the umbrella of continuous auditing or no?
Cybersecurity at this point is not under the umbrella. I don't want to say not under the umbrella. Everything is considered for continuous auditing, all right? But we are selecting business processes that where they meet the criteria of high volume of transactions and the risk criteria for us to develop a script to evaluate. Okay, in every audit, whether it's continuous audit or not continuous audit, we have audit procedures to evaluate fraud, waste, and abuse. So, should we identify that, then we would expand on our audit procedures, which could include, additional script development.
Understood. So based on what you said about high transactions being really the trigger, right, if you will, for continuous auditing, is it fair to say that as it specifically relates to cybersecurity, that we do not have high numbers of those kinds of attacks?
If I could, Tony?
Yes.
Good morning, Chair Weiss, members of the committee. I'm Fonse Caterer, Chief Operating Officer here at the authority. And so I think as you're asking the question, the term of continuous auditing for them is a specific term for a type of audits that they do where they're using code to continuously audit an item. But I think the question that you may be asking is, do we have tools that are continuously monitoring our environment? And so that answer is yes, we do. So we have computer programs that are continuously monitoring emails and phishing attacks and things of that nature, some to make sure that we understand where risks are, we are quarantining items. Those attacks are happening daily, as they are in every place. And the gentleman who just came in has a set of variations of softwares and layers that are continuously monitoring threats and malware and other items. And so while Tony is describing continuous auditing as an auditing tool, there are continuous monitoring tools that we have in place.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Doc, can you actually, Charles, I'm assuming you walked in for a reason. If not, welcome.
He did.
If you can just go ahead and just kind of add a little bit more color to the answers, thank you, that have been provided, just so we can give a quick synopsis of the difference between audit and IT, because although the groups are working together, there is a difference in kind of the day-to-day operational progress that Doc is explaining versus the continuous auditing process that Tony's explaining, and where you fall in the middle.
Right. And you're absolutely right. So we do have monitoring in place, and we actually are currently evaluating what we have in place today. And my team is presenting a proposal to me tomorrow that I'll then take to the IT council on how we can even improve further our monitoring. But just to throw a little stats, we receive about 60,000 emails into RTA on a typical week. About 12% of those are spam and phishing. So we're able to know those types of stats now and block those information. So in the last 3 months, we successfully blocked all of the spam and phishing that came in and identified any potential risks. So we are continually using technology to combat the bad actors, and we're looking to even take that a step further.
Thank you. Perfect.
So
Appreciate
just
Go ahead.
circle around, full circle back to internal audit. If we developed a continuous audit script to evaluate, we'd be testing whether that control was effective and looking at all the times that they intercept spam, or if spam gets through the filter, it gets reported. We'd be providing assurance on the effectiveness of that control, rather than measuring directly those attempts to get into the system.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was actually the perfect sort of cyclical explanation of how it works. And I think, dare I say, that's kind of how it works for a lot of the audits that we've got as well. There's always an operational input. And whether that's, and when I say operational, I'm just talking about the business of the day, whether it's engineering or, claims or bus operation, you kind of fill in the plug in, right? And then audit is there to make sure that those systems are operating as planned. So there's really, as we talk about the IT council, and that's been a work in progress for years, to be able to get to the place where I think we're at a comfortable spot between management implementation and then auditing, kind of monitoring and recommendation. It goes back to the question I think might have come from you, Jeff, about how do we actually get to the implementation from the recommendation and the monitoring. So one hand washes the other in a way. You can't have one without the other. So we've got to start with the issue, whatever the problem is, or just monitoring the system. And sometimes that's how the issues come up too. They can either come up organically through the operationalization of that item, or they can come up through the monitoring that is done through audit. But at the end of the day, with IT, it's a little bit of a tricky widget where we all have to work together. But there are men and women who are working in the IT space under Charles, under Josh, Raj, and Doc to be able to monitor the system that is then monitored again by audit. So it doesn't start within audit, but that's a helpful assist to have someone like Andrew on the team that specialization is really in IT under audit. To be able to have that competency is helpful, to be able to speak the language. But this team that's sitting in front of you does not implement those things. There's another team behind the scenes, and then they're there to monitor the compliance and whether or not there's anomalies within the system.
If you like metaphors, what India described as the 3 lines model, where operational staff would be the front line, the first line of defense. Entities like IT functions, compliance functions, regulatory functions, those are the second line. Internal audit is the third line of defense, where we provide assurance.
All right. Anything else, Tony, for this morning? Okay. Anything from the committee? All right. Seeing none, then we will stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.